Nepal, a mountainous country in Asia situated between India and China. Although you might know the country for Mount Everest and the monasteries, it wasn't long ago when Nepal was a war-torn country in the communist revolution. Nepal had been a monarchy for a large part of its history, but in 1990 the Nepalese people started demanding democratic rights. The United Left Front was formed, which formed the backbone of the push for democratic freedom. In 1991, the country actually achieved its wish, and the Nepali monarch ceded some of its power and allowed a parliament to be made. Although large efforts had been made, Nepal was still not a totally free country, and there was a lot of infighting in the Communist Party on how to achieve greater liberties. The party eventually split when they couldn't agree if it was time for an armed revolution. This accumulated until in 1996 the Communist Party of Nepal started a civil war and rose up in 6 districts. Although the revolution was a shock, it was rather small in scale, with it only being active in a small number of their 77 districts. They didn't even mobilize the Nepalese army, believing it to be a police matter. The conflict was relatively uneventful until 2001, when it took a major turn.
Hello and welcome to our new series, Reality Bites. This week's big story, Nepal, a country shaken, shocked and in turmoil by the massacre of its royal family.
On the 1st of June 2001, there was a big party being held in the royal palace. The night took a turn when the crown prince entered the room heavily armed and started murdering royal family members. He murdered a large part of the royal family, including the king and queen. He ended this massacre by shooting himself in the head. However, he did survive the suicide attempt, and because he took out most of the line of succession, he was crowned king while in a coma. During this time, the palace told the people that there was an accidental discharge of a weapon. Only after the crown prince passed away 2 days later did the real story come out. It is not clear why the crown prince decided to kill a large part of his family. It is rumored it had to do with him not being allowed to marry the girl that he liked, and instead being forced into an arranged marriage. After the death of the crown prince, the king's brother ascended the throne. Following the ascension of Gyanendra, the monarchy lost much of its approval of the Nepalese populace. Some say the massacre was the pivotal point that ended the monarchy in Nepal. The new king Gyanendra was not popular among the people and led to the support of the maoist rebels increasing. With the situation escalating quickly, the US decided to support the monarchy by supplying M16s and training to the government. The US had experience in fighting communist guerrillas because of their time in Vietnam, and they were also happy to stop the spread of communism, and Nepal falling into the sphere of influence of China. Similarly to the Chinese Communist Party in the 30s and 40s, the Maoist rebels mostly got their support from the rural countryside. The government stayed in control of the large cities. The rebels fought primarily by performing hits on high-ranking officers and attacking the rural police stations and military bases. The Nepalese army fought the insurgents by building military bases in contested areas and using those strong points to perform operations in the area. This again is very similar to the US tactics in Vietnam and Afghanistan. In 2004, large parts of the population started becoming discontent with the government. The government not only had to deal with the insurgency in the countryside, but also with a large protest in the capital, demanding more democratic rights. At the end of the year, communist forces took control of the access roads around the capital, Kathmandu, putting the city in a blockade. This led to a lot of restlessness in the capital's population. Not only because they showed the Maoist rebels had the capability to strike the capital, but also because the blockade led to prices of products in the city to rise. On the 1st of February 2005, in response to the inability of the relatively democratic government to restore order, King Gyanendra seized direct power and declared a state of emergency in an attempt to definitively end the insurgency. As a result of this takeover, the United Kingdom and India both suspended their material support for Nepal. This complete loss of democratic freedom turned the political parties of the House of Representatives and the communist rebels into allies with a common enemy, the king. Surprisingly, in the last year of the conflict, the amount of violent conflict decreased significantly, and instead, resistance transformed to non-violent pro-democracy demonstrations. The political parties in the country started working a lot with the Maoist rebels, and they boycotted elections and called upon the Nepalese people to strike. Throughout April 2006, many pro-democratic demonstrations happened across the country, calling for the king to return power to the Nepali House of Representatives. The king was quickly losing control and took many actions like setting up a curfew and saying that everybody out past 10 p.m. would be shot on sight. But with a general strike in the entire country and his riot police clashing with protesters, the king was left with no choice but to reinstate the House of Representatives. The new prime minister signed a peace accord with the communists in no time. Although the king didn't lose total power immediately, over the next few years his power slowly diminished, until the monarchy was abolished in October 2008. More than 17,000 people were killed during the conflict, including over 4,000 Nepalese killed by Maoist rebels and over 8,000 Nepalese killed by the government forces. In addition, an estimated 150,000 people were displaced as a result of the conflict. Furthermore, this conflict disrupted most rural development activities. But the revolution resulted in political, social, and cultural change in